Good morning. It sounds like everybody's ready to start, so we'll go ahead and start, even though it's a little bit before 9 o'clock. We're certainly glad you're here. Appreciate you being here. Hope we can get this all finished with before any storms show up today, so appreciate you being here. One of the things we need to do to start with here is to recognize one of our board members who is completing his tour on the board, and that's Chip Wood. Chip is our student member. He is graduating from high school and going to be attending Belmont come fall. And Chip, we certainly appreciate your service on the board. You've done a great job. You've been very diligent in your attendance at these meetings, and also very diligent in helping us out and making comments and answering questions for us. So, Chip, we certainly appreciate your service on the board.
I just want to say thank you to everyone on the board. As a future teacher, I know that everything that we've been doing in here is going to impact me one day in the classroom. And from where I had been in high school, I'd always thought, well, I'll be in my little classroom, I will have my administrators, and I will never have people outside of that school really taking charge of what I'm doing. And being on the board has been a huge realization about everyone that's impacting education every single day. There's a quote by Richard Fuller that said, "There's nothing in a caterpillar that tells you it's going to be a butterfly." And for me, I could be just like any other student across the state. We never know who's going to be the next Albert Einstein or who's going to be the next president, but it's the job of each of our teachers to recognize the beauty of each caterpillar in their classroom, to realize that one day they're going to blossom into a butterfly of his or her dreams. And my teachers have impacted me, but just as much as they have, every one of the board members and everyone up here has really been a huge impact on me, and just kind of made it instilled in my mind that I want to teach one day so that I can help transform other children. So thank you all for everything you've done for me.
Great. Thank you, Chip. Appreciate that. Let me note that Chip missed his high school prom last night to be with us, or tonight, I guess last night. So, Chip, we appreciate that dedication. Those of you who have attended these meetings on a regular basis will also note that we're missing a familiar face up here, Dick Ray. Dick has served on this board for 27 years, and term limits caught him this last time, and he decided, even though the way that the structure is set up for our board, you serve until somebody is appointed to replace you. Dick said he figured that 27 years was enough, and that he wouldn't attend this meeting. So we'll miss Dick. Also, Patrick, we appreciate you being with us, Deputy Commissioner. Patrick, appreciate you being here. We've also got a new staff member for the state board, and Gary's going to introduce her.
Well, she met the board yesterday at our work session, but I'd like to introduce her to you. Stand up, Danelle. Danelle Walker has joined our staff. She is our general counsel for the state board staff. So welcome, Danelle.
Okay, now it's 9 o'clock, and we'll move into our agenda. The first item is the consent agenda. It's got the adoption of the agenda that we have distributed, and also approval of the minutes of our January 28th meeting. Any additions, corrections need to be made in those minutes? If not, is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda? Got a motion, second? Second. Second. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. The consent agenda is approved. We've got, the next item is some recognitions that we need to make. One of the most delightful things that this board does is to recognize good performance, good teachers, the good things that are happening in the education in Tennessee. So at this time, James Francis will make some presentations to some very deserving schools here. James?
Is that right? Okay. Chairman Ralston, thank you so much. Deputy Commissioner Patrick Smith and Executive Director Dr. Nixon and other state board members and other distinguished guests. We thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And this morning, we have the wonderful blessing of being able to recognize schools in Tennessee that have shown, regardless of the student's background, academic achievement, and that education can make the difference in the lives of children. These 10 schools come from suburban, urban, and rural areas of our state. They have shown the ability to meet and exceed the state's accountability criteria for the past 3 years. Schools were visited by State Department of Education staff members for their exemplary practices and to verify those practices. They also will be sharing their best practices across our state at regional and state meetings. And we will also be representing or presenting their stories on our state website. At this time, if I could, I'd like to have the representatives from 6 Tennessee Blue Ribbon schools to come up to the front of the room, and Dr. Debbie Owens, Executive Director of Federal Programs, is going to help make these presentations. I appreciate so much the opportunity to work with Debbie. So our 6 Blue Ribbon schools and their principals, if you'll come up and stand behind Dr. Owens, and she will make a presentation as I call your name, and I'd like to ask the audience to please hold your applause until we get all 6 of our schools recognized. These 6 schools will be presented with a Blue Ribbon plaque for 2010-2011 and a certificate from the governor of our state, Governor Haslam. First, Bethpage Elementary, Sumner County Schools, Sumner County, Tennessee, where Bill Johnson is principal. Next, representing Franklin County Schools, Cowan Elementary School in Cowan, Tennessee, where Cynthia Young is principal. Next, from Benton County Schools, Big Sandy School from Big Sandy, Tennessee, Marty Carruthers, principal. Representing Memphis City Schools, Douglas School from Memphis, Tennessee, where Angela Brown is principal. From Colmont, Tennessee, Grundy County High School, Grundy County Schools, where William Childress is principal. And our 6th and final school is Blount County, representing Blount County Schools, Townsend Elementary School in Townsend, Tennessee, where Dr. John Dalton is principal. Let's give these 6 schools a round of applause. Next, if I can have our 4 distinguished Title I schools come up and stand behind Dr. Owens, that would be great. These schools will also be presented with a plaque as a national and state distinguished Title I winners and a certificate from Governor Haslam. First, the State Title I Exceptional Student Performance Award goes to A.H. Roberts Elementary, Overton County Schools, Livingston, Tennessee, where Bridget Carwile is principal. Next up, the State Title I Distinguished School for Closing the Achievement Gap Award goes to North Greene High School, Greene County Schools, Greenville, Tennessee, where David McLean is principal. The National Award for Exceptional Student Performance goes to South Greene High School, Greene County Schools, Greenville, Tennessee, where Cindy Bowman is principal. You can tell Dr. Kirk is smiling really, really big. And our final school to receive an award this day, the National Award for Closing the Achievement Gap, goes to Hollis F. Price, Memphis City Schools, Memphis, Tennessee. Daphnia Beasley is principal. Let's give these 4 schools a round of applause. Chairman Ralston, I am pleased to present to you and to this board your schools and our schools in Tennessee that do not allow poverty to be an excuse for lack of student success. They show that they can make a difference in the lives of our children by what they do each and every day, and that Title I can make a significant difference in the lives of our children. These 10 schools are carrying out and helping the hopes and dreams of Tennessee children come true. And I want all of us to give all 10 of our award-winning schools a final round of applause. Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Let me just extend the congratulations to this board for all the winners. I think it's one of the most important things that we do is to recognize outstanding performance, and we certainly want to congratulate you on the awards that you have received. One of the things that James said I think is really important, and folks here have heard me say this time and time again, is that one of the things I think we do least well in the state is share good practice. So I would encourage you to share the things that you're doing with other schools, other school systems, to make sure that we can spread good practice across the state. So again, congratulations, job well done. We appreciate it. Okay, next item is Linda has got an award to make, or Linda's not going to do it? Linda? Yeah, okay.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to have public recognition of 2 very well-deserving teachers. The 2009 is not a typo. The way that this program works, the National Science Foundation sponsors it, but they have to work very closely with other government agencies, such as the White House. So that, in and of itself, makes things problematic in terms of getting things done in a timely manner, because all of those hoops have to be overcome before this process can fully take place. So the awardees for Tennessee for 2009 were actually nominated in the fall of 2009. They submitted their applications in May of 2010. And probably after the national panel reviewed it back in the summer of 2010, they notified these awardees in perhaps late November. And then, of course, they were invited to Washington December the 13th through the 17th of 2010 to receive their $10,000 award and meet the president and go to a state dinner and all the nice things that happen in Washington. So that's why we're honoring them in 2011, is because that process takes so long. So I just wanted to clarify that. The first one is Peggy Bertrand. She teaches at Oak Ridge High School. She's primarily a physics teacher, but her love is AP Physics. She wasn't always a teacher. She has a PhD in chemistry and worked in industry for a while, and then decided that it might be more rewarding to work with students. So Peggy is our science awardee for 2009. And Jeffrey McCullough teaches Algebra 2 at St. Mary's Episcopal School. He's very much involved with technology, use of technology in his classroom, and works a lot with Texas Instruments. So you can see that these are very busy people, and unfortunately they weren't able to be here today, and it wasn't the weather that scared them off. Peggy is helping to prepare her AP students for the AP exams, and in Oak Ridge you don't opt out for the AP exam. Everybody takes it if you take the course. So she is a very dedicated teacher, and that's where she is working with her students. And then Jeffrey is presenting at the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics conference in Indianapolis. So both of them are doing great things both for their students and professionally for others. So we're very proud of them, and I will make certain that their certificate of recognition gets mailed to them. And they would be here. They feel honored. As a matter of fact, when I told Jeffrey about being recognized by the board, he sent back an email and he said, "You have made my day." And these are excellent teachers. We can't recognize excellence too much. So thank you for doing so.
Very, very good. Thank you, Linda. Please convey to Peggy and Jeffrey that we're certainly proud of them, and we certainly appreciate their performance. Great teachers. Sound like they've got great background and lots going on. So we appreciate the recognition that you're providing. Okay, let's move to our action items on first reading, and the first one is identification of persistently low achieving schools, the policy there, making some changes in that. Deborah is going to present that.
Yes, this is a policy on the persistently lowest achieving schools with a slight revision from last year. The only difference is the aspect of a multiplier, which took into account the years of failing AYP. We expect that the Elementary Education and Secondary Act is going to be reauthorized, and we expect that the accountability system will change, and so we don't want this used as a factor within our formula, and so we have recommended that change to the policy, and that's the only change.
Okay. Questions for Deborah?
I just have one as it relates to the timeline for reauthorization. Any sense of when that might happen? And
there is discussion right now in the House taking place, and actually the Senate is supposed to be discussing it also within this month. So there's a lot of concerns from states that many schools will be identified as we start reaching towards that 100% timeline, and that will overburden the accountability system and the support systems for states. So it actually is in the midst of all of this budget crisis. It actually is moving. So it could be May or August, and we're getting a little bit more positive feedback that that's more of a possibility now than it was a month ago, but we'll just have to wait and see.
do you have the sense that this clarification on the definition will increase or decrease the number of schools on the list?
It keeps the same number because it's a percentage of schools, so it's based on a percentage, so it keeps the same number. What it does is that it identifies those schools based on the full population of the school, and AYP, as you know, sometimes moves a school through the accountability system based on only one subgroup, even if maybe 95% of the students are doing all right. Just that small subgroup may have trouble meeting the benchmarks, and so this looks at all students and has a focus on the lowest performing of the whole student population.
Thank you.
How much change happens within that group that are identified as lowest performing schools? How many schools are added? How many move out?
You mean this from last year to this year, or based on that definition?
About with this change, what?
There was a change of a school where they had one subgroup, and so they wouldn't then qualify under this definition. That had happened last year, and actually there were objections from the districts that in fact the multiplier was used and their overall population would not have fallen into that tier 1 had that subgroup, had the AYP definition been used. So we revisited it this year based on the objections in the districts, which one objection was Knox County, and also looked at what's happening with ESEA and what we predict in the future. And so we thought this is a cleaner definition to look at all students.
My question had to do with funding. Do you anticipate any changes in the funding formulas with this change or with the new legislation?
Okay. This won't enact any changes to the funding formula with this policy change. What we are anticipating for funding based on, I think 3 days ago, was that the budget compromise that was sought to prevent the government shutdown looks like we'll have a 0.1% decrease in funding. That still hasn't been 100% finalized. It's supposed to be finalized by today. And then there's lots of discussion about President Obama's budget for the following fiscal year, and that's where they're looking at more significant cuts. And so we are, the House right now is looking at a 18.7% decrease in ESEA funding, but that's just the beginning of the discussion. So, you know, they have not passed the president's budget yet.
Okay, other questions for Deborah? Is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Second, okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. We'll move to item 3B. David, you go do that?
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you, Chair and members. This simply changes the definition of what constitutes a public school, and it simply removes some language to sort of clean it up. The definition as it currently reads says it'll have a principal, it'll have at least a teacher, and it'll have a physical plant. And that probably made sense when nobody knew what a computer was. So now we're in a very different state of reality in how we teach our students, and this seems to make some sense in order to operate some virtual schooling opportunities out there for not only alternative schools. It came from the Alternative School Advisory Council, and that makes sense because they want to create some new spaces within that as well. And we certainly agree that that's a very appropriate move to make.
Okay. Any questions for David? Is there a motion that we approve? Got a motion second. Any questions, discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, David, I believe you got the next two items that you suggested we take together, so if you could talk about items C and D.
Yes, Chair, thank you. These really are the same item. They just happen to live in separate parts of the rule. One deals with summer school for traditional students, and one deals with adult students, but they both have to do with seat time requirements. Currently, there are some time constraints within that say if you go to summer school, you have to have a certain number of contact hours. I believe it's 133 contact hours within that rule, and it doesn't allow school districts to move students forward upon mastery of material. So it seems to make some sense to allow some discretion within that. Districts certainly have the opportunity to run traditional summer school programs, and we're not going to tell them that they can't, but we also want them to have the flexibility to award credit, and they know better when a student's ready to move on than does the clock. I realize that when we come back for second reading, these are in separate parts of the rule. They'll have to be voted on separately, but for today, they seem to fit pretty well together.
Okay.
I'll answer any questions you might have.
And item C has a reference to the Tennessee proficiency test.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. That is some arcane language given around a test that doesn't exist anymore, and we can remove that between first and second reading, just sort of clear that up. That would make a little more sense.
Okay. Questions for David on these two changes to modernize our rules? Any questions here? Okay, is there a motion we approve both items 3C and D? Okay, got a second? Second. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Computer technology, Morgan.
Good morning. You have before you the computer technology curriculum for 912. Most of the courses, keyboarding, computer apps, programming 1 and 2, interactive multimedia design, are joint courses between CTE and academics. These courses were approved by you in the October meeting, but however, since they're also in the academic, we had to come back with them again. The only other course involved is computer literacy, which is a 9-12 course, but it's there to catch those students that come into school because of the state law that every student must have an equivalent of a year of computer science.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions for Morgan? Any questions on the computer technology? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion? Second? Second? Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you. Okay, middle school STEM teacher licensure standards.
Thank you, Chair and members. At your last meeting, you gave final approval to the formation of a new endorsement area around 5 through 9 science and math, engineering and technology. We're calling it a middle grade STEM endorsement. So these are the licensure standards that allow licenses to be issued once they're finally approved. We already realize these are about 90 to 95% complete. They've had the opportunity to go before the entire STEM community, it seems, within Tennessee, to middle grades teachers, high school teachers, higher ed faculty. We've gotten backing on this from the Principals Association, from the Superintendents Association over the past couple of years. They're looking forward to this. The one group that has not had an opportunity to vet it yet is a group we rely on greatly, which is the Board's Advisory Council on Teacher Education and Certification. They'll look at that on June 7th, make any modifications, recommendations for modifications that we see fit. We'll also continue to work with the department on any tweaks that need to happen, but we have a nice long summer to work on that. And I think universities are anxious to get moving on turning out some teachers with some deep content knowledge around math and science, and we're looking forward to getting them into our schools.
Okay. Teresa?
I just have one question. Have these standards been validated by industry at all? And I know you talk about higher ed, but I'm just wondering about the deep science.
As part of the entire process, we've had some outreach along the lines of business. Now, through the various STEM councils that we've had discussion with. So you should have a list in there who's actually had a chance to look at that, and that might inform the conversation a little better. But suffice it to say, these are a conglomeration, if you will, of our current standards in both math and science in those grade levels, which have had that vetting process over the years as well.
I know it was just such an important
yes and no is really the answer to your question.
I know that process was such an important part of the work that we did with Achieve, and as we talk about science on a broader scale, I just think
and these are
important.
Plucked out from those standards.
Okay, great.
If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions on the middle school STEM licensure requirement? I think we all have said and recognize that this is an extremely important subject, and I guess as I look at things that we need to really work on, this is a major opportunity for us, and hopefully we can get these teachers trained in this manner quickly, get them into the middle schools. Important subject. You mentioned that the universities are ready to go, and is generally the reaction from the universities out there, teacher training programs, been positive?
That's institution dependent. We still have the generalist side of the house on that, and I do not anticipate that every university will move in a rather lockstep manner. I think different universities have different capacities to move, but we do know of some that are anxious to get this rolling and already want to start planning degree programs around this. We hope it's a fast walk rather than a slow walk.
Okay. Questions, Chip?
One thing I have is, will this STEM licensure be able to help the teachers become more prepared for helping students on the ACT?
Well, it absolutely should. I mean, that's certainly through the plan and explore tests that are given during that time frame when they have them, and consequently the ACT.
Okay.
That is certainly a goal, and they were built around. It's a great question because they were really built around that in mind in terms of the benchmarks for success, the ACT side of that.
Okay, other questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve these standards on first reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, David. Okay, we'll now move to our action items for final reading. The first one is Introduction to Fine Arts. Jeanette, going to present that? There's Jeanette here? Or?
I don't see Dr. Crosswhite, but I can do it for her. I'd be happy to. This is the survey course that you approved on first reading. It gives a broad overview of the different areas of fine arts, either 4 or 5, depending on how the school district chooses to implement this. It's for those students who don't necessarily see themselves focusing in a particular fine art area, and it helps them meet their college entrance requirements and high school graduation requirements around a fine arts course.
Okay, questions for David? Okay, is there a motion that we approve the Introduction to Fine Arts on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. High school transition policy. David.
Thank you, Chairman. This is some clarifying language around end-of-course exams for students who are enrolled in college classes that are substituting for high school classes. So, for instance, if a student is taking calculus at the university, well, that's probably not a good example because there's not an end-of-course exam associated with that. But one that would have an associated end-of-course exam, that it means they do not have to sit for that. Remember, it's not a course that's exactly parallel to their high school course. It's generally something over and above the high school course, and so the curriculum does not line up and is not intended to line up. So we wouldn't want them coming in and having to sit for a state exam that they would not have the background content knowledge for. Now, the exception to that is a test that would have to be used for AYP reporting purposes, but we don't have any students that are going over and taking sophomore English at the University of Tennessee, for instance. So that really wouldn't come into play at that point, or Algebra 1. Algebra 1 is not, high school Algebra 1 would not be a dual credit. So that's just some clarifying language to give locals some guidance, because we are not wanting students to have to come back to sit for an exam that they haven't been in that class all year.
I think the area in question was really in U.S. history.
Sure.
For having students were being required in some systems to take both the end-of-course test at the university and then come back in and take the end-of-course test in the high school.
Okay. Questions? Do you have a question?
Well, just a clarification. So if I'm a senior and I am, at Kingsbury High School in Memphis, and I'm going to Southwest and I'm taking a math course, how at the end of the year am I measuring that student's achievement?
By the grade they receive in that college course.
So they're in no end of course.
If there is an end of course test associated with that class that the state gives, then that doesn't come in. That doesn't factor into the student's academic mark. We accept that the college faculty have made an excellent judgment in how they awarded the grade to that student.
And so it's a grade only from that
Correct.
college course.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Other questions?
My only concern is going back to this having the college. For example, at our school, there's one class that the Spanish class, we don't have. There's no end of course exam in Spanish, but the college level, the course was a breeze. I took it last term. I got a 105 in it, and yes, I'm good in Spanish, but compared to the high school level, it was a joke. And that's my only concern, is that these courses at the college level, although there are many colleges that are designed to have a much stronger curriculum about the colleges, some of the community colleges, especially around where I'm at, that their courses people take their courses because they're simple and they're easy to pass and get a good grade in. And I'm really concerned with that, with the whole not having that exam and just having the teacher give a grade for it. Because, honestly, I could have probably passed the class I took without studying, without even coming to class. And I'm worried that there would be students who would take a course that they could just joke and go right by with.
All I can tell you is that, you know, we'll do our best to monitor these situations, and, you know, we can assume, we do assume that colleges are doing their best to teach the best courses they have, and we have Dr. Rhoda here who, you know, if he wants to jump in on that. But I would just say that, you know, we're going to continue to encourage dual enrollment and dual credit, I believe.
Well, I would just add, like David, you know, we make some assumptions too that perhaps we need to go back and revisit. And yes, we do advocate dual enrollment, dual credit, all those things that would move things along for students, but that's based on an assumption. So we'll look at that with you.
Sure. Okay. Good discussion. Other questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion that we approve this on final reading? Got a motion? Got a second? Okay. Any further discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, Gary, teacher and principal evaluation policy.
Well, if you remember, we began this journey about 14 or 15 months ago when the General Assembly in the extraordinary session passed the First to the Top Act, which called for a revision in the teacher evaluation procedures, established the what we call TEAC, the Teacher Evaluation Advisory Council, to meet and to make recommendations to the state board for the criteria and guidelines along with the requirements for a local grievance procedure. We have received those recommendations. You have already approved the implementing rule on final reading. You have previously approved on first reading the policy, and now you have the final approval, final reading for the educator evaluation policy, which contains criteria and guidelines from which models will be developed to evaluate teachers and brought to this board at some later date to be approved. It also contains requirements for LEAs to develop local grievance procedures that pertain primarily to correct data and fidelity to the process. So we discussed this yesterday in our work session. I'll be happy to answer any particular questions any board member may have.
Okay, questions for Gary? Any questions?
I think I had enough yesterday, but I think that I know we're not voting on the models today, but when we heard about the models yesterday, I just had a lot of concern about how cumbersome it was and how hard to implement and the time factor, because realistically, one evaluation could take 60 minutes, and for some of the rubrics that we heard about, and so it's just concerning to me as we have these models come forward that they are easy to understand. The technology part is a big important part to me about the implementation of it and also the recording of it, that we get this information and it's understood and it's easy to understand and easy to implement on the local level too. So I think we discussed it a lot yesterday, but.
Yeah, good comment. Teresa?
Just a question for Dr. Nixon. Now, we're approving the policy today, right, Dr. Nixon?
That's correct.
And then there will be a process by which these alternative proposals are brought back to the state board, right? Could you just walk through the process for us?
Well, at this point, the process laterals to the commissioner, Commissioner Huffman and Deputy Commissioner Smith. We'll develop a process and develop forms from which they can gather information from the systems who have piloted evaluation models, and from the data that they gather, will have to judge whether it complies with the criteria and guidelines contained in this policy and is worthy of being recommended to the state board for approval. And the commissioner, once that is done, the commissioner then will let us know, and we'll schedule either a conference call meeting or some other way to meet. It'll have to be prior to the August meeting because they've got to get the training, they've got to get these models approved. I suspect it'll probably happen sometime in the first half of May, but we're not sure how that will play out. But at this point, it goes, the ball laterals over to the department to gather that information and make recommendations to the board about the models.
Any sense of a timeline on that, Patrick?
I think we're prepared as soon as, you know, those applications are submitted to act very timely, because as Dr. Nixon said, you know, the timeline's very ambitious.
And is it your sense that, I mean, we heard from a few of those alternative providers yesterday, potential proposals, and our sense is that everything was going to ultimately go against a 5-level scoring rubric, and some of those did not yesterday, but are they all going to comply to that scale that you've established?
I think, as Commissioner alluded to yesterday, we'll have to ensure that whichever model is in place, that there is a fairness aspect to it, and so the ultimate rating of a teacher in terms of their performance should be consistent among all evaluation models. Might also mention that you know, our friends over at Peabody have some of the first to the top, race to the top work to evaluate all pieces of race to the top. Will continue to be looking at this to ensure that we're getting what we desire.
Do you have a sense of when we're going to see results from the field test?
Sarah, you might be, Haber might be able to answer that, Mr. Chairman, if that's your permission, ask her to address that issue.
Good morning. We have gotten initial preliminary results about the field tests that Matt Springer presented at the TEAC meeting last week. Tancred is working on a full report, which he estimates will be about a 30-page report to the department around the results from that field test, and he thinks that will be probably early June.
So we'll be ultimately approving these before we actually see all the data on that, but that'll be an ongoing process. Is that right, Sarah?
It is an ongoing process, and we have initial data that shows positive results on all the models, and we'd be happy to share those initial findings with you.
Okay, other question, comment, Carolyn?
And that has to do with, you know, the models that were talked about yesterday all had some cost associated with them. And one, you know, group had gone together, different districts had put money in to develop their pilot model. What will be the financial burden for school districts for implementation of any of the models?
It's my understanding that, you know, the state is choosing to support the TAP observation rubric, in that outside that the costs are borne by local school districts who wish to seek an alternative model.
So the TAP is the state model, and if they decide to go outside of that, they have to pick up the funding. The state money won't follow any of the other models. Okay.
My question then is, when Mr. Gaddis was talking about the tools that all these many people were going to be trained on, so all the evaluators will have this technology piece that they can use. Everybody that's trained on that will have that tool, that technology tool that they can take back. That's part of the funding.
The RFP is out now for the technology tools to support the broad evaluation work across the state.
But that applies really to the TAP model, to the state model, I think, and then an important piece of the other models is that you got to demonstrate that they're going to provide the training and so forth.
That's right. We're just supporting the TAP.
I think that's like one observation from yesterday, was that the TAP models clearly had thought through the professional development for the observers, and just hopefully that when the alternative models are brought back, that we have a great understanding of how that will be handled too, and how that will be done with educators in the classroom.
I think that's why the research piece is so crucial to ensuring that we get the product we desire.
And also the uniform training of the evaluators, so that everybody is looked at in the same manner.
The Commissioner alluded to that yesterday, that they're making sure we have inter-rater reliability and making sure that the training really does go deeply into the system, each district.
Okay. Other questions? I think we spent what seemed like 6-7 hours yesterday. I don't think it was quite that long, but we spent a lot of time talking about this, and I think it's important, Patrick, as you look at this, and sir, as you look at this, to look at how we can simplify this thing. It just seems, I guess, across the board, across my personal experience, that we have tended to get this way more complex than it needs to be. I think we need to recognize as we go forward that we're really continuing to pilot this thing, and that as Commissioner said yesterday, as we've talked in their meeting, I think we need to recognize, I suspect there will be substantial changes to any of these models that we develop over the next couple of years. And I think making sure that they are can be executed and aren't terribly onerous in terms of the time required, but also aren't so complex that you get lost amongst the trees. I think it's possible with some of these rubrics that we've talked about to, have so many check marks that you can't really tell what's been evaluated. So I think that's our concern, and as we go forward, I think we're working with a timeline here that's very tight, and we've got to move forward with it. But I think we'll see the need to make modifications as we have some experience with these various instruments.
Mr. Chairman, might I add, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to be over in Chapel Hill with the State Legislative Leaders Conference, and was on a panel with Dr. Tom Kenny from Harvard, who's worked on the teaching effectiveness measures in Memphis, and who's considered sort of a national leader in this work. And it was very encouraging for me to hear the perspective of others on the panel that echoes what you just said. This is extremely difficult work. I know sometimes feel intrastate, like perhaps that we don't have things right where they need to be, and I think we do recognize we need to continue working, but I assure you that from a national perspective, I think people are actually looking to Tennessee, and people across this nation are struggling with some of the same issues we are in non-tested subjects. But to echo Commissioner Huffman's comments yesterday, we do have to get this ball rolling, and knowing that there will be steps along the way in which we'll certainly want to advocate for changes, and thus the involvement of Peabody in making sure that the product produced is doing what we want it to do.
Okay.
I just have one final point, because I do think it's an important first step. Not perfect, continuous improvement required. I think one thing that we all continue to grapple with at the board level is just data, and how soon we can have reliable data, and how we can shorten that window. And I just want to kind of put a plug in for that.
Well, absolutely. I know that's a prime concern of Commissioner Huffman's as well, something we've talked about a long, long time, and it's just crucial that we get this data back in a timely fashion. I know this is not a discussion of legislation this morning, but it's fortunate in some ways that the recent tenure legislation dovetails nicely from a time perspective with the new evaluation model, because we will have a couple of years under our belt to ensure that the model's working as we want it to before major tenure decisions are made for teachers after July 1 of this year. So that is one, I think, positive aspect of things.
One final comment as it relates to teacher tenure law. That's the reason we have to stay with the 5 levels of performance, because the teacher tenure law ties directly to this evaluation criteria and guideline requirement of 5 levels, and we've got to stick closely to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait just a minute, because because of the information that I got preparing for this meeting and looking at all the excellent teachers. What I heard Dr. Huffman say yesterday was that he wants these schools to be, the good ones to be modeling, and he wants it to move a pipeline, and we are being looked at. But going forth, as we go forth, and when you look at all these excellent teachers that are 3s, and so there's a little bit of disconnect there of really what are they? If they are 3s, which is just supposedly average or meeting expectations, and so there's some concern there with that, for me, with that grading and how we go forward with that. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Okay, other comments, questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve the policy on final reading? Not the models, but the policy, right? Teresa has made a motion. Is there a second? Second. Got a second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. I think it's important to recognize that this is a critical piece of what this board has been working on for many years now. It seems I think we've got the curriculum in place, we've got the expectations, out there, and this teacher evaluation thing is kind of the next major step that we're taking to implement this whole series of things that we've been talking about for a number of years here. But important step forward. And Patrick, we wish you all the best in trying to evaluate these models and getting the data to us. Okay, next item is the non-public schools Category 1 and 4 rule consolidation. And Danielle, we're going to let you cut your teeth on this one.
Mr. Chairman, board members, you have before you on final reading a proposal to amend the rules to combine the two types of schools. Originally, the law said there were 3 categories of schools, 1, 2, and 3, and then the state board came back and created Rule 7, or Category 7, and so pretty much they're required to do the same things as Category 1 schools. So we're moving to consolidate the two so that the students in Category 7 schools will be eligible for lottery scholarships.
Okay. Any questions for Danielle? Is there a motion that we approve on final reading? Got a motion second. Any questions? So this requires a roll call. Phyllis, if you call the roll, please. Aye. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you, Danielle. Okay, the next item is the Cambridge ACE substitutions. David.
Thank you, Chairman. You heard an awful lot about this yesterday, so I won't get into the details too much with it, but the highlights are that Bradley County would like to implement this program, and we certainly think that anything that goes above and beyond minimum standards is something worthy of looking at, and the idea that the department can look at these introductory courses to the Cambridge program on a case-by-case basis, make some administrative approval of that, and then once they've had some time with the program, bring it to the board as an actual route towards graduation. Seemed to make some sense to the staff, and we hope it does to you as well.
Okay. Is there any questions for David? As I said, we heard a good bit about this yesterday. Is there a motion that we approve on final reading? And what we're really doing is approving the department to go forward and doing the substitution evaluation. And
That's exactly.
Not really approving.
That's exactly correct.
The Cambridge program until we know more about it. Is there a motion that we move forward with this? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Okay. Any questions, discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. The David International Baccalaureate Diploma Program.
IB program is something we have a little more familiarity with here in the state, and this is essentially a technical correction. In 2010, you approved the idea of IB, completing the IB diploma program as a route towards graduation, and it has just never been formally added to the policy, and we'd like to make that technical correction to the high school policy.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve? Got a motion, second? It's really a technical correction to that program. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next item is the distance and e-learning policy, and David, I believe you got that.
Take it home with e-learning.
We got
this is a situation, one of the unusual situations where the policy is having a really difficult time keeping up with practice. Distance learning and e-learning is moving so quickly that when we initially wrote this policy, it was built under the assumption that companies were going to be calling upon school systems to actually sell courseware, coursework, curriculum around that, and we had the belief that it would be the department's role to sort of serve as a clearinghouse for that. And what has really happened is that we never anticipated that school districts, consortia of school districts, philanthropic organizations, others would want to create courseware around student learning. And it's really what we're essentially saying here is taking the department out of the approval process and saying, we have approved courses. We already have Algebra 1. We're not saying that Algebra 1, distance learning Algebra 1 is any different from Algebra. We don't have Algebra 1 with chalkboards And we don't have Algebra 1 with whiteboards, and we don't need to have Algebra 1 with computers. We need to have Algebra 1 and treat distance learning as a delivery method rather than something that's foreign to the curriculum concept. And this puts the pressure on the local school districts to make sure that what they choose to do curriculum-wise aligns to the state board's curriculum for whatever subject they want to use it for. I fully anticipate that you will see this policy over and over and over again over the next several years as there are advancements made in this area. I just think this is something we need to really get used to seeing a lot of, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm glad we're moving forward, and it's not a stagnant policy.
Okay.
I'll happily answer any questions you might have.
Okay, questions? Any questions?
Just a comment, David. I see that we'll have a report annually from the department on this issue on the ones that have been approved. Is that correct?
That's the intent. You might want to, Commissioner Smith might have more to say about that.
Absolutely, and this is one thing I know that we're interested in, really getting a good perspective of all the different distance learning activities going on across the state. Hopefully, being able to leverage all that work and provide more opportunities for students statewide. In addition, part of the STEM work and Race to the Top is to create some virtual learning opportunities. So as David alluded to, I think this is an issue that will continue to be at the forefront for the board.
Terribly important. It's no way that we go get to where we need to be without a lot more distance learning, e-learning. It's got to be there. Okay, is there a motion that we approve this on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Anybody willing to second? Okay, got a second. Carol, okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Chip, we certainly want to wish you well. Belmont, we hope you'll come back to visit us and give us a grade on how well we're doing. So we certainly enjoyed your contributions to the board and getting to know you, and want to wish you well. Phyllis, have we heard from everybody on the October meeting? Okay. It appears at this point that we're going to change the October 28th meeting to November 4th. We have the workshop on the 3rd and the board meeting on November the 4th. We're still polling some of the members of the board to make sure that works. It's a request that I made. I run into a conflict on the October 28th meeting and would like to change that to November 4th if we can. So we'll plan in that direction and be back to confirm those dates with board members to make sure that that works for everybody. Okay. Patrick? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we leave today, I'd like to publicly express my gratitude to Amanda Anderson at the department. She's leaving to take on another career opportunity. Amanda's been very involved in the communications around First to the Top and Race to the Top, and has been deeply embedded in that since the First to the Top Act was passed. She's also spearheaded our TEL survey, and I think Tennessee's, if not the highest, has some of the highest participation rates of teachers across the state, and we appreciate all her work, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that before the board and give her a round of applause.
Amanda, I've gotten forward to looking at your email every morning, so I guess I need to look for somebody else now. Is that right? Okay. Well, Amanda, do appreciate your good work and do a great job on that, capturing everything that's said across the state and all the various news media that's happening in K-12 education. We appreciate that. Anything else? Okay. Appreciate you joining us. The meeting is adjourned.